Keep it moving, keep it moving.
I know.
We're limping around. We're all old.
Avery has got it down pat. She can imitate me now.
Good.
I can get her to do it for you.
She's been playing with my guitar all day.
She came in there and told me she said, I can play the guitar now. Got it down pat. I said,
I was trying desperately to take a nap in my study.
Even you ain't that good at taking a nap.
I said, I think Uncle Danny's in the next room. Go
Stop dominating.
go see Uncle Danny.
Exactly what she did. Most of the time, yes.
Hadn't heard this song much. Another one of those my uncle taught me.
There ain't no telling, I'm telling you.
How'd they get out of tune?
I've been working on it since they left.
All Avery. She'll fix it, Will. She'll fix
And
it.
Addison wanted to play it, and she
She was too busy cleaning. She went in there and she had to clean. She likes to clean.
Thank you for the valley I walked through today. The darker the valley, the more I learned to pray. I found you where the lilies were blooming by the way. And I thank you for the valley I walked through today. Thank you for every hill I climbed, for every time the sun didn't shine. Thank you for every lonely night I prayed till I knew that everything was all right. And I thank you for the valley I walked through today. Life can be all blessings, life can be all sunshine, or the flowers would die, the rivers would be desert, all bare, worn and dry. Life can't be all blessings, or there'd be no need to pray. So I thank you for the valley I walked through today. Thank you for every hill I climbed, for every time the sun didn't shine. Thank you for every lonely night I prayed till I knew that everything was all right. And I thank you for the valleys I walked through today. Every time I sing one of those songs, I'm 13 or 14 years old again, sitting in the living room of my aunt and uncle in Michigan. Now let's look at Romans 10 tonight, and it's good to see y'all. We stayed here all day. We had 3 birthdays we knocked out. Beth is having surgery. Terry's mom's having surgery tomorrow, so please pray for her all day tomorrow. Serious surgery on her back and whatnot. They're going to shoot up in there amongst them and try to get her some relief. I like Romans 10. It's got some great verses in there. Talking on Sunday mornings about being saved, Romans 10:13 says, "For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." Saved is a good Bible word. Let's look here. He says, brothers and sisters, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. My heart's desire and my prayer. I would say to you that over the long haul, over many years, One thing that I've learned is that it is not always easy to maintain a passionate burden for the lost. After fussing with them and talking with them and talking to them for many, many years, you got to say, well, I heard this old story, I've been telling it for years, and I probably told it from the pulpit here, that old country church, all the windows are up. It makes me think of the Flint Baptist Church many years ago, doors open, lights on. Pastor and the old deacon are the first ones there. They've got everything in place, in order. Pastor sits on the front row. The deacon comes, sits down beside him and says, well, preacher, we've opened the doors, turned on the lights, and rung the bell. If they don't want to come, they can just all go to hell. So, in good humor. Not in a bad way. Sometimes it becomes more and more increasingly difficult to understand why someone wouldn't want to be a Christian, why someone would not believe in Jesus. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, entitled Why I Believe. And everything between me and God and everything about God in my life was started by Him. I can't say, well, I looked into it, or I tracked it down, or it seemed interesting to me, and I began to study up on it. None of that is true in my life. Like the story by Samuel Coleridge Taylor entitled The Hound of Heaven. It's a long poem. If you're not into poetry, you wouldn't enjoy it, but it wound up in one of my literature classes, and I was amazed by it. So this fellow was running from the Lord. The Lord was after him like a hound. That's what the whole thing's about. How many stanzas in it? My heart's desire and prayer to God is that for Israel is that they might be saved. So He has a burden for them, a burden for the lost. We get to a place, I think, where if our children and our grandchildren are saved, if the people we know and love are saved, it gives us great comfort. That is undeniable, but we can sometimes become satisfied with that and say, well, if you don't want to know Jesus, that's fine. You just go right ahead. But that is not how the Lord feels about lost people, or how Paul felt about the nation of Israel. For I bear them record that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. He said, I know all about that. They're really religious people, he says, very passionate, enthusiastic. And there is a philosophy that says, if you're just really into it, and that's all it really takes. I heard about a fellow someone, he says, I sincerely had a stomach ache one night. I sincerely got up to go to the bathroom and look in the medicine cabinet and very sincerely drank a half bottle of shoe polish in the dark. Can really be sincerely wrong. Not according to knowledge. The word for knowledge, there are two words, basic words for knowledge. They're used primarily in the New Testament. One of them means kind of an intuitive knowledge, and the other is to know by experience. He says they ought to know better by experiential knowledge. For they being ignorant of God's righteousness. And we, here in the South, we spell that ignorant. And it's a pejorative. We don't really relate it to the word ignore. To ignore something just really means to pretend it's not there, to not observe it, to decide to not pay any attention to it. Ignorant, however, in the South means mentally deficient, stupid, or somehow or another not intellectual. They're just ignoring God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness. Have not submitted themselves into the righteousness of God. Righteousness it occurs many times in the book of Romans because it's a very technical theological book, but it just means being right. Being right with God. So that me and God are okay. You and God are okay. Y'all like this. You've got it all straightened out. You're all on the same side of the page. Y'all are okay. Righteousness. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believes. Now, I just made the statement last Sunday night. It seems that much of the New Testament is going back and telling us, let's just go back to Abraham. And that's what he did back in chapter 9. So Abraham believed God, and God said, I'm going to just look at that. You believe me. I'm just going to look at that, and I'm choosing to see that as righteousness. I'm imputing righteousness to you. But I did mention that the Mosaic Law, he completely put it into it. He didn't modify it. He didn't say, let's swap it up a little bit, change it. But it looks like he says, here, Christ is the end of the law. The end of the law. For everyone who believes. That means the rules, the regulations, the commandments. He says, no, it's a completely different ball game. It's about having a relationship with Jesus and living your life according to that. For Moses describes the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which does these things shall live by them. He says, here, do this. Here's the Ten Commandments. Just take these and do all of that. Okay, sounds easy. It never was, and we never did get it done. But the righteousness which is of faith speaks on this wise, says it like this. Say not in your heart, who shall ascend into heaven? You see, he says, you're asking the wrong question. How are we going to get to heaven? He said, that's not the right question. It's about getting to heaven. He said, the question is, who came down from heaven? He said, that's the question. I heard Brother Michael Mason, a group at Pastor's Conference. I think it was an original song because I don't think I've ever heard anybody record it other than them or sing it. It was called Jesus is the Question. Back in the 70s, you could hardly drive around in the state of Alabama or across the South without seeing. Back then, I think we had lost our minds about sports, and you didn't have Alabama football or Tennessee or Auburn. You know you had the plate that people had on their cars. They had one or two. One of them was, Christ is the answer. You know what the other one was? Yeah. Well, that was in the 80s. I'm in the 70s. So, Jesus is my co-pilot. Is the other. Remember that? Now, y'all might just as well be right as me. But then, Christ is in. Or Jesus is the question. He said, it's not how can I get to heaven? He said, no, who came? He says, who shall ascend into the deep? Or who's going to hell? It's not the question. That is to bring Christ to me. Let's take 8 up there. We're going to knock this chapter out tonight. Well, what does it say? The word is close to you, even in your mouth and in your heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. And verses 9 and 10, I've shared it with so many lost people. It just seems to lay it out so plainly. If you'll confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus, you'll just make a verbal statement, and believe in your heart that God is raising from the dead, you'll be saved. Now, he knows that what you're thinking about is that sounds like magic. You mean just say something? If I just say something that makes it so? He said, well, let me explain to you what I mean by that. With your heart, man believes in righteousness, and with the mouth, confession is made saved. I'm talking about the kind of declaration or confession you make because it comes from the heart. Something started in your heart. You believed. The confession really is just an evidence, or it's an exposition of it's exposing what you believed in your heart. The scripture says, whoever believes in him will not be ashamed, for there's no difference between Jew and the Greek. What? And he's writing this letter to a group of Gentile and Jewish Christians, and all the Gentiles they gladly received this, and the Jews were saying, boy, there's no difference between the Jews and the Greek. For the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they that call on him in whom they've not believed? He said, Now you might say, well, all you mean all somebody has to do is just say the words. He said, well, I'm talking about. He says, nobody's really going to say those words unless they believe. And how shall they believe in him in whom they've not heard, and how shall they hear without a preacher? Well, I like to read those verses and say, what is a preacher worth? And he's really not. I've almost often wherever I've been, someone's called me preacher, or the preacher. Where's the preacher at? And I kind of say, I do a lot more than just preach. I do lots of stuff, but I don't. But he's not talking about pastors or ministers. He's talking about messengers. How are they going to hear unless someone tells them? You're a preacher. And how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Good news. I think if you ask most people in the world today of their opinion of Christians, they're not of the opinion that we Christians, that we're pretty much down the mouth. We're against everything. We're against everybody. That's not true. We're being misrepresented by some who are outside the faith, and then we have some who are within the faith that say, you're giving everybody the wrong impression because you're an idiot. Glad tidings. It's good news. Would you like to hear some good news? But they have not all obeyed the gospel, for Isaiah said, Lord, who has believed our report? So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Faith always comes from God. The Bible says, Paul says that faith is one of the aspects of the fruit of the Spirit. You don't unction up or screw up your belief. You don't say, I'm going to reach down deep and I'm going to decide to believe. No. You just believe because it's the seed that he plants. It's something that God permits you. I don't believe in much stuff. I'm very skeptical. I don't get to do it as faithfully as I used to, but somebody rang my bell today at lunch. I think it was Joey Gotro. I heard him say the word ancient aliens, and I was in gear, man. When I used to come in on Friday, that in case you didn't know, if you go to the History Channel, they play Ancient Aliens about from 11 o'clock to all night long. You go home, Johnny watches it all the time. He's insane too. Crop circles and lights in the sky and swamp gas, man. I love it. But I don't believe any of that stuff. I've never even seen funny lights in the sky. I don't believe in Bigfoot or fairies or the tooth fairy or imps or leprechauns. I don't believe there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's a wonder that I believe in Jesus because there's just not much. I'm not a really big believer. I'm not a joiner. I look at people I got one lazy eye, man. I look at them with one good eye and say, The only way possible for me, I didn't take all the world's religion and say, I wonder which one of these is right. I didn't compare denominations or churches. I didn't look at the Quran and the Bible and the Book of Mormon and say, let's sort through this. No. Everything that's a part of my faith life has got a hold of me. God said, here, try this on. All right. Faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, they have heard. Their sound went into all the earth, and their words into the ends of the world. And I said, did not Israel know? First Moses said, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. He's talking in terms like someone who wanted to make the persons they love jealous. Isaiah is very bold and says, I found of them that sought me not. I was found of them that sought me not. It's hard to improve upon that, but he's really saying, I was found by people who weren't looking for me. I wasn't looking for Jesus. And I can't say that I found him. He found me. I was made manifest unto them that asked not after me. Heard lots of testimonies. I gave away a book this morning. I can give you another one that's free. If you'll go to my website and look in the books tab, there's a book entitled The Word of Their Testimony. And it's really just like a manual or instruction booklet on how to write or how to tell the story of how you became a Christian. It's the most powerful thing. And there's a verse in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, that says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Boy, we sang about power in the blood tonight. Do you know that there's just as much power? Now, let me say this. There's just as much power in the word of your testimony as there is in the blood of Jesus. That's what the Bible says. Because nobody can argue with it. I spent part of my lunchtime talking with a huge pregnant lady. I was afraid she might explode and get all over the place while we sit there and talk. She's a delightful person. And just praying for delivery. I think she said about 7 or 8 weeks, something like that. She just, if you gave her, said, what about today? She said, let's get her done. Let's go. I'm ready. And we were talking about babies. You know, I found someone, a member of my family, I happened to say something about the lives of unbelievers. After the first Democratic debates, presidential debates this year, I just put on my Facebook page, I don't put a lot of political stuff, maybe this wasn't political, I said, you know, out of 22 Democrat candidates, I said, not a one of them favors the right to life. Not one. And I said, you know, that bothers me. I'm all in favor of a two-party system. I don't think we ought to get rid of all the Republicans or all the Democrats or all the politicians. Sometimes I am. But my kinfolk who doesn't know me very well chimed in, crawling all over me and about my religious beliefs, and maybe he said some archaic verses from the Bible. And I said, I don't believe my views about life don't have anything to do with my religion or the Bible or my faith or being a Christian. I said, and just right out of thin air, I came up with something that is completely inarguable and indisputable. It just came out of my soul. I said, you know what? I just love babies. I just love babies. I love them from the first time I hear about it. On my Facebook page this week, you know, the first picture we ever had of Carice is an ultrasound. She's improved a little bit since then. A little more color in her cheeks. She doesn't look quite as wavy or black and whitish. I love babies. You can't say, no you don't. I can say, yeah I do. I love babies. They can't argue with you. So they say, oh, well, you're an idiot. I didn't say that I love smart babies or that I'm really smart. I know everything about babies. I just said, I love babies. You know, and all he could do was just... And so every time I address that issue for the rest of my life, it's going to just be like that. I love babies. People would come by the house there in Arkansas and they'd say, what are y'all doing painting this room and hanging up all these? We're getting ready for the zygote. The embryo is on its way. We got a fetus coming. We never said that. Well, she just probably looked like a shrimp. You know what we were telling everybody?
She was a baby.
We're going to have a baby. We already got a baby. I talked to her, I read to her. I told somebody today that we didn't have cable TV, so we just sit in bed and watch Terry's belly move. It's entertaining. Watch that thing swim around. All she needed was a basketball. She'd have been happier. The word of your testimony is exactly like that. If you start talking about theology or doctrine or the Bible or a verse or some point of dogma, it can always be belittled or destroyed. If you just say, I love Jesus, and, this is my story. That's not your story. Yeah, it is. I may be wrong. I may be deceived. I may have been mistaken. But this is how my faith life began. And that's the word of your testimony. Telling other people how you became a Christian. I wasn't looking for it, and he found me. But to Israel he says, all day long I stretched forth my hand to a disobedient, gainsaying people. He says, you know, the Gentiles, Jesus found them and God reached out to them. They weren't even looking for him. But he says, you know what? I've been knocking on Israel's door since the beginning. I've been wooing them and courting them and bringing them flowers. I've been sending them candy. He said, I've been courting the nation of Israel. He says, Gentiles out there, and all you Gentiles in the Roman church, y'all all know Jesus, and y'all weren't even looking for him. Y'all weren't trying to get saved or hoping to get saved. You just lumbered into it because God reached out to you. But he says, well, the Jews in your church, he says, I've been looking for them, stretched forth my hands. I've been like a hound of heaven, looking for them, tracking them down, sniffing it out. That's a good chapter. I like this. This is where he lightens up a little bit, got a little heavy in chapter 9. And here he's just gotten back to just talking about being saved again. And he's got a congregation. Some of them are Gentiles that have no background at all in Hebrew faith. And then some Jews who probably told the Gentiles about Jesus. And that's how their church began. Well, tell somebody what Jesus means to you. Don't worry about trying to be of a particular faith or strain of belief, to be doctrinally profound or correct. Don't worry about offending someone, because you're not preaching ethics or morality, or you're not being judgmental about them. You're just saying, let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about me. This helped me. This touched me. This changed me. And I don't know if you want this or not. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with you, or that you're lost or going to hell. He says, let me tell you about me. Your testimony. Tell people why are you a Christian? Why would you tell someone that you're a Christian? And if you don't know what that means, study on it, ponder it, but make it a part of your meditation so that you can tell it from a dozen different directions, that wherever you... I remember a director of missions named David Miller used to come. He was a director of missions of an association there in Arkansas. He came to our seminary to talk to us, and he had cerebral palsy. And it was very difficult for him. He was in a wheelchair, and he spoke in a very slow country drawl. And I had never heard of him, but he would come. He was one of our favorites. He was definitely one of my favorites. And they'd bring him to chapel at the seminary there in Memphis, and he would speak to us during chapel. And I always, when I found out he was coming, I relished it. I heard recently that he's still going. He's still active. But they'd kind of wheel him up to the pulpit, and they'd get him up to the pulpit, kind of lock his legs into place. Randy can tell you more about this. Get him a good grip there. I remember the first time I ever heard him. I can do a little bit of an imitation of his voice. He said, he got up, and I thought, it didn't matter if he's preaching on 10 verses or 100. He couldn't handle a Bible up there, so he always had all of his texts memorized. It knocked me right out. First thing I ever heard come out of his mouth, he said, there are 360 degrees in a circle. I said, okay. I wonder where this is going. He said, 360 degrees in a circle. He says, that means that there are 360 different ways to fall down. And I have tried them all. I have tried them all. Falling down. However you fall down, whatever direction you're pointing, you ought to be able to come up telling people about what Jesus has done for you. Whichever way you're facing, wherever you're going, wherever you've been, it is important. And I would have to say that when I get to know people, and I don't get to know everybody that I'd like to, but one of the things that one of the things that I do when I'm getting to know people is, if they are a Christian, is to find out, how did you become a Christian? What's your story? How did that happen to you? I've heard some unusual things, strange stories. Some of them made my eyes pop. Some of them very mundane, just kind of ordinary. They said, come down the aisle, and I did. They said, join the church, and I did. Shake my hand, and I did. Sign this card. And ever since. I said, okay. Can't argue with that. And that's good news for a lot of people to find out. I'm not here to tell you what all fix all your problems, because it ain't fixed all mine. This is my story. You remember that song? Tell me the story of Jesus. Write on my heart every word. You know, there's a verse in that song, it's the third verse. It says, when we get to heaven, we're going to learn a new story. They're going to give us a new story to sing. And he says, you know what it is? You know what it is? He says, it's the old story that we've known all along. Keep beating. Keep beating. Well, God bless you this week. I hope you have a good week. The Lord will use you. There are the folks that I work for. The contract has been bought out at NASA, and so there's going to be a new sheriff in town, as they say, beginning of September. So they've been making all kinds of noises to most of us, all of us, some of us, about signing up. So the 1st of September, I'll either have a job or I won't. But I knew it was a temporary contract, so by the end of August, I will have been working there about 4 months. So of all the things you're praying for, now, I wouldn't say to pray that he'd be able to keep his job. I pray to get fired just about every day. So I wouldn't want you praying against me. That's what Jeannie does. She said, I can't believe they won't fire me. I've done everything I can. They just won't fire me. But pray about that. But more than anything else, pray for my mother-in-law. She's a sweet person, the only mom I got now. All right? Well, I know the police is out there, so y'all be careful. Yeah, be careful. Go out there and just act right. I mean it. Yeah, there's summers about. There's summers about, and they're parking around, and they don't care whether you're a Christian or not. They don't care whether you're a Christian or not. All right? Be careful. For a lot of reasons. You're dismissed. Be careful. I'll go home and see if I can finish my nap.